Hello everyone, let me begin by saying that this is not a negative review. I do like the game, but this also isn't a gush fest about how perfect the game is either. And what I've noticed on YouTube is that if every other reviewer is giving a game perfect scores, 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 type stuff, and you give a bit more critical review, let's say somewhere in the territory of 7 out of 10, by the principle of review relativity, as I saw with Bayonetta 3, your more moderate score then becomes a negative score, and your review that's a little bit more moderate becomes a negative review. And so I just want to say that up top here, even though I am going to be critical of aspects of this game, I actually do like it, so try not to get too caught up in everyone else giving it 10 out of 10. Secondly, when it comes to other retro-inspired indie games like Shovel Knight or The Messenger or Cyber Shadow, there comes a game that the players and critics like to play called Spot the Reference. And what happens is a lot of the reviews you'll read for Moonrider and a lot of the conversation you'll see around games like Moonrider is just talking about its references. Oh, this is from Shinobi. This is from Ninja Gaiden. This is from Super Metroid. This is from Castlevania. But for me, the problem with this trend is not only do you never learn what's unique about the game, other than how many references it makes, but it also puts up a really powerful shield that makes reviewing the game pretty tricky because, for example, if I point out a mechanic like, oh, I think the wall jumps in Moonrider are really awful and don't lend to the pace of the game, a shield that can come up is, oh, well, these wall jump mechanics are from Shinobi, and so there's nothing wrong with them because they're from Shinobi, so it's good. That's the way it's supposed to be. Or, hey, I think the level design here is a problem. Oh, well, there's a section like that in Ninja Gaiden, and so that totally works because that section's taken from Ninja Gaiden. Or what's with these water mechanics? It doesn't seem to really fit with the pacing of the game. Oh, well, the water mechanics are from Super Metroid, and so see, that's a good idea because it's from Super Metroid. So on and so forth. And the problem when I do these reviews is when I try to take a holistic, critical approach to stuff like this, these types of, oh, well, that's a reference to this is a reference to that, justifications come up over and over again. So just to warn you, I am going to critique aspects of this game, and some of these critiques may actually be references from older games, but when you make a new game, you can't just take mechanics from other games, throw them in a blender, pop out a game and be like, bam, it works. You know, the mechanics need to fit together coherently. It's not like you can take the jump mechanics from Metal Slug, put in platforming sections from Super Mario Bros. And say, hey, this works. You know, the mechanics and the level design, the elements are supposed to fit together coherently. So with all that said, let's talk about Vengeful Guardian Moonrider. The first aspect of this game that's going to pop out to everyone, critics or players, is its excellent visuals and pixel art and presentation. In my opinion, this is what helps this game and other games like Blazing Chrome stand out among many of the other retro-inspired indie games because gameplay-wise, there's a lot of really fun, really good retro-inspired indie games. Red Pulse by Boghog could be an example of that. But what a lot of them lack, and what this game has, is that really compelling, gripping, exciting pixel art and graphical presentation. I think it matters, and I think it matters a lot. And this game absolutely nails it. So visually, for the most part, I think this game is really good. I love the blood when you kill things. I love the way the explosions work. I think later on, though, the game does start to run out of steam because when you get to the end of the game, the final stage is pretty underwhelming, not only gameplay-wise, but visually. And there's this final boss fight with the guy, the Saint Seiya guy in the golden armor. And for me, there's this big glass background as you're fighting him. And I was thinking, okay, this glass background after you kill him is gonna explode. And then you're gonna fight the giant mech in this really out there cinematic epic battle. But that doesn't happen. You just kill the Saint Seiya guy and then it just cuts to black. So I think the game has really solid visual presentation, but I do think by the end, by the time you reach the last stages, it really does start to run out of steam, unfortunately. Not only with the visuals, but also with the gameplay and level design. We'll talk about that later. So overall, though, I love the graphical presentation, and the highlight for me is the blood that comes out of people when you kill them. Not a lot of retro games tend to do this, but I really like it when they do, so you can't really fault the game too much there. The strongest aspect of the game's gameplay, in my opinion, is the raw mechanics that they give the player. So when I first started playing and you get into the holding chamber, before I progressed in the level, I just tried out all the different moves the character can do, and I was very excited because I do like the move set that the game gives the player. I like how you're able to run, I like the slashing combos. I like you're able to crouch and slash. I like the dive kicks, of course, and you've got 2 dive kicks. You have the diagonal or the straight down. Movement wise, it seems pretty solid, even though the running dash attack is kind of a problem, because what you want to do is most of the time is not do the running dash attack, because it has this massive recovery animation, even though it does a good amount of damage. So what I recommend doing a lot of time is you're running and then you let go run and then do a slash or a standing slash or a crouching slash and then resume running, because if you just run around and keep doing dash attacks, you're going to get yourself in trouble. Or sometimes the movement can be a little bit funny, like you're trying to run and attack and you accidentally dash attack and you jump off a cliff or you jump off an edge trying to do that, or jump into a pile of spikes. So I would say the dash attack, I wish there was a little bit more of a buffer on that, or a little bit stricter input on that, so you're not accidentally doing it so much. But what I don't like about the run is the double tap to run. That is a big mistake in my opinion, because you have the button and the button has no buffer or lag on it, and so having the manual button is amazing, gives you a ton of control, that's great. But then when you have the double tap to run, that causes problems, because let's say you're trying to do really precise movement when you're walking, you're fighting a boss and you want to do these really nice steps when you're walking, but then you accidentally double tap and run and dash attack. It happens to me a lot. I think he should just remove that or add an option to turn it off, because the double tap to run sucks. So get rid of that crap, because it ruins the precision of your walking, and you already can run whenever you want with the button, so there's no reason to have that double tap. The only reason games put double taps into run, like beat 'em ups and stuff, is because there is no run button. But if you have a run button, you don't need the double tap. It's just a big problem at that point. So I wish that was revised, but overall, I really like the way the game feels and plays mechanically. My main issue with the game, and why I say it's conflicted in the thumbnail, is the game's level design. I think that is where the game is really struggling the most, and in a lot of areas. So let's begin by talking about just the on-foot regular sections. So the game has sort of a Mega Man X style vibe, where you start, you have to play that first level, and then you're exited into the overworld. And you'll find that you get a pretty good variety of stages, and some of them definitely work better than others. So let's talk about the best stage of the game, in my opinion, which is the forest level. This stage gets it. This stage is, I think, the blueprint for how the game's level design should have gone for the rest of the stages, or for most of the stages, is because you start off, you're supposed to be running, you've got this thing behind you, and it's pushing you to move quickly and to move forward. The level is recognizing, okay, you have this giant mech flying behind you, and so we can't throw too many barriers in your way. So you're running, you get to feel the swiftness and the speed of your character. Then you have these sections where these walls come up, kill it quickly, which is now testing your combat skills. You get rewarded with it going down, and then you continue forward. So it's really fun and engaging, and the pacing, and then you got snipers, and you have to use your jumps and your dive kicks. This stage is what the game should play like most of the time, in my opinion. It just is doing everything right. Speed, it's using your different move set, it has really clever enemy layouts, the mid boss is really good. If the whole game was like this stage, I think it would be much better. So I wanted to point that out as a real solid highlight of what I'm talking about and what I want to see in terms of level design. But unfortunately, a lot of the other stages do not adopt this style of level design. But the worst stages, in my opinion, though, are the ones where it feels like the level design, he just kind of ran out of ideas, or took ideas from other games that don't really fit in. One of the worst sections is you're running around, you're running, you're moving your speed, and then there are these red blocks in the way. And you'll see this in a lot of the stages, just these red blocks hanging right in front of your way. You think, okay, so you'll do like a power attack and kill them real quick. But these red blocks have a crap load of HP. They're not really hard. It's not that these red blocks create difficulty, but they slow down the pace tremendously, and not in a fun way. So you're running, okay, you gotta damage sponge red blocks, you gotta get through them. Then there's like little sections where guys are stabbing you with spears and you have to run back and forth and attack the red blocks. To me, that style of level design is very rudimentary. It feels like when you take like a game maker class and they're teaching you how to do different things in game maker, that's the type of level design you'll learn is, oh, run left to right and attack the blocks, and oh, you figured out the little puzzle, now fight the guy. To me, it feels like this game, mechanically, graphically, everything it's going for is much too sophisticated to have such basic sections of level design. Another section really much like this is the section where there's the lasers, and of course, I don't know where they got this. This is also in Cyber Shadow, and I think this area in Cyber Shadow is also really crappy. This whole idea of, okay, there's these lasers, then you have to jump up and let the laser pass. Then you get down, slice, 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 slice. Uh-oh, laser's coming. Get back up. Here it comes. And it's built so that you can't just bypass through it. It'd be really cool and interesting is if it was timed just so that if you're really skilled and you're really fast, you could get through the whole thing without ever stopping. That would be interesting, but the game isn't built that way. The game is built to make you sit and wait, come back down, slash, 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 get back up, sit and wait, come back down, slash, slash, slash. So when you play Super Mario Bros, the best stages in Super Mario Bros, and when Super Mario Bros really shines, are the stages where you're just cruising through and you're jumping and you have all these really precise little platforms you have to hit, and you have to get around the pipes and the piranha plants, and you're just going full pace. That's why Super Mario Bros. 1 is such a popular speedrunning game, because a lot of the stages are built like that in Super Mario Bros. 1. You just run the entire time, and it really works. It's really fun. The inertia becomes less of an issue because of that. In this game, the mechanics are there, the ideas are there, but the level design does not want to take advantage of them. The level design, I don't know what he was thinking. It wants you to play like a really rudimentary platformer type stuff, like run, oh wait, stop, now you need to jump and wall jump in this little cove for 5 seconds to wait for the platform to come back, then you have to get back down, and then you have to ride along. A lot of the game's platforming sections are pace breaking rather than pace challenging, because the game forces you to stop. And my least favorite mechanic of the game is the wall jumping. I think the wall jumping system of this game is really linear and rudimentary, and if the game was built like that, if the game had all these really linear, rudimentary style sections like a Castlevania type thing, that would work, except this game is also invoking stuff like Super Metroid and Mega Man X, and for people who've played those games, both those games have excellent and compelling wall jump mechanics, and you can use a lot of precision and control, and the difference between a good player and a great player in those games is their ability to wall jump with finesse and precision. So it's just weird that the game has all these sophisticated mechanics with your run and your dive kick and all that sort of thing, but then when you go into wall jump mode, it becomes straight up old school randomly for no reason, and then it becomes really frustrating because it seems like, okay, why can't I do Super Metroid style wall jumps, or why can't I do Mega Man X style wall jumps? The rest of my moveset does that, but for some reason the wall jumps don't. Again, it's just taking ideas from other games and sort of throwing them in there without thinking, wait, we need to fully follow up on this idea then. If we're going to have Super Metroid style obstacles, then we probably should have Super Metroid style mechanics, right? There's just a lot of sections like that in the game that I think are unfortunate. So those are my critiques of the on-foot sections, and honestly, I say potential because they could actually get patched. Like, the developer could patch those red blocks to have less HP so that you can just one strike them and keep going. Or he could kind of do a little something with the mechanics with the wall jumps to make them feel a little bit more fleshed out. Like, all this stuff is very, very fixable, and I wouldn't be surprised, and in the future, if some of these things get adjusted and you leave me comments saying, oh well, the red blocks now are patched or whatever, that yeah, these things could be fixed. And so that's why I'm saying the game has potential, and I do like the game overall. I just feel like there's a lot of stuff that's still left on the table that could be improved upon and could really take this game from being a good game to a great game, because this game is good, but it's not Super Metroid good, it's not Mega Man X good, it's not there, but it could be if they just improved some of these aspects of these games and really tightened up some stuff. But that's just the on foot section. Now let's talk about what is clearly the worst aspect of the game, and you know it's even bad when other reviewers giving the game 9 out of 10 sort of mentions it's an issue, which are the on-rails bike sections, the Moonrider sections of the game. I am not someone who's going to complain about a shmup section in your game. I thought the idea is really cool, and it reminds me a ton of the Batmobile sections in Batman Returns, and I really love Batman Returns. I get the reference. The problem is the actual execution of how these stages are constructed. First of all, I've talked about this in a lot of other reviews when it comes to shmups, is the idea of gameplay density. And that idea could really help out these motorcycle sections, because what happens a lot of the time is that you're just hanging out. Nothing's happening. There are stretches of these stages where nothing is happening. You're just sitting there and it's like, oh, check out the 3D, you know, or whatever it's doing, but nothing is happening. And then a lot of the sections, it's not the patterns themselves are a problem, it's just that there's not enough. They're too sparse, they're too empty, and they're too repetitive. Those are the three issues. They're sparse because a lot of times nothing's happening. They're empty because even when something's going on, it's not really, you can just avoid it. It's not that big of a deal. You can kind of just go around things. You don't really have to engage all that much. And then they're too repetitive because when you come to the boss fights and comes to a lot of the enemies, they just repeat the same thing over and over and over again. And it's not challenging. And then it goes from being not challenging to being repetitive and boring. And so I know a lot of players, especially speedrunners, when they come to these bike sections, they're going to want to like ROM hack the game and edit out these stages because they're just not doing anything compelling. The sections I think could work, but they really need to be filled in a lot and they should be cut down as well. They're just too long. So with some balancing, with some update patches, I could see these sections really working because I do like taking ideas from Batman Returns with like the turns and like when you turn right, that changes your drift and stuff. I like all of that. It's just the actual execution of making that work that I think could really be updated on. And that could be a thing where maybe the developers aren't all that experienced with shmups and so they're just trying to make a game that feels right, but at the same time they're not willing to push the envelope a little bit. So I would say make those sections more challenging, more interesting, and less repetitive. And this brings me to the final critique of the game, which are the Metroidvania elements. And yes, I'm not a fan of Metroidvanias. That's just right off the bat going to be something that is a turnoff to me pretty much no matter what they do. But I'm going to critique this from the perspective of, let's say I sort of invested in the Metroidvania ideas. The problem with the Metroidvania aspect of this game though is that it doesn't really add to the package overall, even if you're into it, because once you sort of find the stuff, you know, that could add maybe another hour or two of gameplay where you're just sort of walking through the stages. Oh, look, I found this item. Oh, look, I found that item. And yes, the items themselves, I think, are a really cool idea. I'm not saying the items shouldn't be included, but how they're included, I think, is just a little bit underwhelming and doesn't fit with the vibe of the game. So the vibe's supposed to be like cruising through the stages, getting your S ranks, and it has this real timing based element to it where the faster you complete the stage without dying, that's how you get your S rank. And I've S ranked almost all the stages, by the way, in my second playthrough. But the problem is like, okay, how does the item collection factor into that? Because it's not point based, it's just you know where the item is, and when you replay them, you already have the item collected. It just doesn't work either way. Either they want you to explore the stages, but that cuts down on your time, so then you won't get your S rank, or you just ignore the items and get the S rank, but then you didn't get the item. So to make that come into line, what I would suggest they should have done is throw this whole idea of doing the Metroidvania style exploration in the first place. It just doesn't fit the overall vibe and style of the game. Have the ranking system take more prominence so that when you get to the end of the stage, if you get the S rank, you get the item. That's how you unlock the items, is getting S rank. I think that would make the ranking system more meaningful, and it would appeal more to the demographic of player you're going for, which I'm assuming, based off of the rest of the game, is sort of the speedrunning, arcade, hardcore type of player, right? Rather than the Metroidvania players. That's the problem, is that if you're a big Metroidvania, Hollow Knight type guy, and you love exploring and seeing all the secrets and stuff, this is going to feel very light and uninvolved. So the Metroidvania people aren't really that excited about it. But at the same time, if you're the arcade player like myself and you just want to blast through the stages and get S ranks, well then taking all this time wandering around the stages for these little secret hidden paths and stuff like Mega Man X, it just doesn't work for me because I don't want to do that. And I know every second I spend trying to find whatever item is time that's being taken away from my S rank. So the game wants you to play it 3 different times. So the game wants you to play it 1 time through normal, and then it wants you to play again at this sort of Metroidvania style, getting the items. And then once you get all the items, then the game wants you to do a 3rd time coming through with the S rank. But I think the way it's implemented into the game just isn't that elegant or engaging. Some players will go ahead and make the whole journey, but for me, why should I? I don't really feel like it. I'll just play through the stages, get the S ranks, and I'm done. And that leads to the question of replayability, and I think the replayability factor is just not going to be that strong. I went through and cleared the game my very first time, learning all the patterns, learning all the enemies. That took me about 2 or 3 hours. But once you learned all the patterns and enemies and stages, you could just blast through the game pretty quick. So speedrunners are going to be flying through this game really fast, but the speedrunners aren't going to be super happy about the replayability because there's all this crap getting in their way that's going to make it boring for them. Like they're going to be running along, doing all this crazy platforming and wall jumps and head bashes and all that sort of stuff. But oh, red block. Oh, red block. Oh, laser section. Oh, water section. Bike section. Okay, let's let the bike section go by. For a lot of speedrunners, this game's going to drive them up the wall because the pace is going to be constantly halted. They're not going to get that adrenaline pure rush like when they play Super Metroid and they're just running from room to room, speed boostering, wall jumping. I do a lot of Super Metroid speedrunning myself. That's just not going to appeal to them because the level design just isn't there. The wall jump mechanics just isn't there for that style of gameplay. And so then the other style of gameplay that the game offers is sort of like this Castlevania, Mega Man sort of thing where you're going at a slower pace and you're sort of engaging things at a slower pace and looking and exploring and finding stuff. The levels aren't big or expansive enough for that to really work that long. It's not going to take you forever to find all the items, maybe a few hours. The game is trying to serve two audiences, but it's not serving either of them fully. In my opinion, very, very few games can serve both audiences well. There's really only one that comes to my mind, which is Super Metroid, because of the sheer amount of mechanical flexibility in that game. But this game, like I said, the flexibility isn't there, the level design isn't quite there. So what it ends up with in the end is Vengeful Guardian Moonrider is a good game for everyone. Everyone is going to like the game. Everyone's going to think it's good. But I don't think it's quite there to be a timeless classic like a Shinobi or a Ninja Gaiden or something. It doesn't reach those heights because it's too compromised in terms of its design, and it just loses steam at the end, by the way. Like the last stage, you can tell they threw that together super quick, and some of it is almost insultingly anticlimactically easy. Like that elevator stage up to the final boss and stuff. There's sections where you just like walk back and forth on the platform. You could tell they're like, oh crap, we got to get this game done now. Here, just put like random walking puzzles in here real quick. The boss fights, for example, once you learn the key, bam, you got him. Once you know how the boss works, you're good. You know, they don't have a lot of variability or AI that you need to really figure out. So the combat really isn't all that engaging once you learn it. It's fun the first time you learn it though. So that's kind of how this game works. Is it's a really fun first playthrough. But then once you get the hang of it, it's going to feel compromised for sure. So thanks so much. Also, if you haven't seen, the Electric Underground shirts have arrived. My next video is going to be talking about how to order them and stuff, but I'm super happy with how they turned out. Prepare for that. Thanks so much. Adios, everyone. So thank you to the $5 patrons, 100, Accepting Panda, Dingo, Another Joe, Anthony A, Aaron Solis, Arrow Viper, Bo, Ben, Blur STG, Borgie22, Brian Shiver, Chase Palumbo, Shadow Maltese, Chris Yusufovich, Chronic Burnout 3, Clammy Coyote, Coast, Cook Some Soup, Corey Mark, Des Audio, Donchi, Darren Griffin, Delta Tango 6, Disco Stas Leia, DJ 420 Praise It, Eric H, Fantaside, FCK, Francisco, Full Set, Retro Schmupper, Hausu, Jake Ryan, JLab, JB RPG, John Kelly, Gameboy Guru, K, K2, KZ, Khalil Reedy, Contain, K Horse, The Goddamn Milkman, Larridge, Malaise, Maz, Megadeth 859, Manung, Mechalin, Michael Stum, Mitch LY, Queen Charlene, Nathaniel Davis, Neon Dagger Games, Okla Googles, Psycho Blizzard, Radocat, Raul, Real Skeen, Riff Mason, Rolf015, Sarah, Scanline City, Seesaw SDG, Shmup Junkie, Sirpong, Steve Fiction, Superfunk, Takiro Mucho, The Brute Rex, The Dirty Screech, The N1, The Old Bensta, TRM, Sugumo, Tuiyu, Twilight EX, Unikoi Roots, Vic Viper, Waggy Legs, Boghog, and Utakaya. Thanks for watching.